to start off, what's
Okay.
your name and where do you live?
My name's Yusuf Ismail, and I'm from Grangetown.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're telling us that you grew up in Gagetown. What was your home like? Do you have any vivid memories from your childhood?
My childhood was like two worlds combined into one. So within the home, which is probably the most dominant, it was a very Somali upbringing. So two parents, and two parents were quite mindful of the fact that we're Somali and didn't want us to lose our identity. And it was like kind of like their big fear was we would get too comfortable within this within Wales, within this like European environment, within this Western environment, and kind of forget like we're Somali. So it was like two different realities. So in this house would be intensely Somali, have to speak in Somali, eat Somali food, really learn about the cultural practices. And then the minute I was outside of that front door, I was like anybody else, basically.
Oh my God, that's so
Yeah.
interesting. How do you feel like that affected your identity?
Obviously, when you're a child, you're kind of like subconscious to it. But as an adult, you understand that, like, as a black person in certain spaces here in Wales, I felt like I had to kind of like be mindful of who I am and kind of like take a step back, not be like. And I wasn't quite comfortable in my heritage, so to speak, growing up, because you're a little bit different from everywhere else. And as a kid, the main thing is that you just want to fit in, But yeah, what was your question? I go off on tangents, by the way. You have to
okay.
keep me a real
That's
man.
okay. Like,
Yeah.
how do you feel like that affected your identity, if it did?
Oh, as an adult, and I think the minute you start like thinking about certain situations and why you responded to certain situations, then I understood like it had a really huge impact, but quite subconsciously that I wasn't aware of, right? Like, for example, you're in school, teacher reads your name off a register, they butcher your name. I wouldn't have the confidence to correct them for many years. And then it got to a point where it's like, no, they have to say my name correctly, purely because a name's an important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
That's great. Thank you so much. So you talked about teachers, an amazing segue. Where did you go to school, and what did your school and your way to school look like?
Okay, so originally I went to Butetown for a year, then I moved to Cantonian, then I moved to Willow. So I kind of moved around, right? Where did my way to school? So school, I had to catch a bus initially.
Oh, so you trekked?
I trekked, right? And if it's Salon, you had to catch a bus with everybody else, right? But then with the other high schools, it was kind of like you had to kind of make your own route there. So yeah, like, what was your question again?
No, that's okay. It's just
She's got me reminiscing now.
that's the point. So you went to school.
Yeah.
What did that look like? So you caught that.
Oh
so
yeah,
you
okay.
walked
So
away-
my way to school, so I'd be wearing a backpack. I was like, I think year 7. I was like amazed by the world, and everything was just like colorful, and everything was an experience. Because again, like the household that I came from, my parents were quite like, I want to say militant. Militant is probably the wrong word, but really quite restrictive in a certain sense. So just to be free in the world as a young kid, like initially it was amazing, and then it got pretty mundane after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, yeah, you're going to school, and I didn't have the best schooling experience, so I wasn't super like excited to go there. But again, I'd see my friends, so
That's the most important part,
yes,
honestly.
absolutely.
The friendships you keep.
The friendship, 100%.
So you said your parents are restrictive. What was an average day like in your childhood?
Oh,
I remember you said Somali language only, Somali food only.
yeah.
Let's
So
do like a routine,
okay.
morning to bedtime.
Okay, morning to bedtime. I'd wake up, and my parents were very disciplined even within themselves. So they were early risers, right?
That means you probably had to rise up.
Yeah, and it as well, because like you come from an African household, you come from a Muslim household. So in a Muslim household, you got 5 prayers. One of them is extremely early. So my parents always remember they were up early, all times, especially my mother. Like sometimes I used to wonder, like, does this woman even sleep? Because like she'd just be up at the crack of dawn in the morning. So I'd wake up really, really early. And my parents were great in assigning tasks. Like you weren't just allowed to chill in front of the TV or have a PlayStation and stuff, which my other cousins did. And I used to envy them like crazy, or my other friends as well, right? So you do tasks. My parents were heavy into education. So they'd expect you to, I don't know, to be doing something proactive. And so, are we talking about a Saturday? Let's talk about Saturday. Let's talk about Saturday. So I used to go to Islamic classes, which I used to hate because I'm terrible at languages, right? So, so Somali was a struggle for me. So you have to learn Arabic on top of that. Oof. And our teachers were like extremely militant. And as a result, it was like a very... So imagine you're struggling with a language and then you learn it in this really hostile environment.
Yeah.
Where some people might get like, some of the teachers, if you could call them that, would put their hands on some of the kids. So you just be full of fear in this environment. But then I met a teacher who was incredible. He's from Jordan. And his name was like Sheikh Hisham. And he was like one of the sweetest human beings I've ever come across. And he just put a 360 spin on it. So I was motivated. So let's just say I'm going to his classes.
Yeah.
I would go to his class and I'd stay there from like 11 till 3. And then as soon as the Islamic classes were done, I would just roam the streets of Butetown.
Yeah.
Until it got dark.
Until the street lights came on.
Until it got to like sunset-ish, right? Because my dad was quite around the area, he used to drive. Like I see his car like 3 or 4 times, right? So he was always around the area. So I couldn't really break my curfew in a crazy way. And then I'd go home. And I'd come back to the smell of my mum's cooking. And my mum used to like put on some, I know the Arabic for it, but like kind of like frankincense. And the aroma would just like, as soon as you turn the key into the door, it would just hit you. And like my mum used to have the most amazing scent, right, as a person. But like that aroma inside the house, yeah, I miss it. I miss it, yeah.
So for you, when you think of home, what does that look like?
Laughter, warmth, but also structure. Like, you know, there's a lot of structure to it. It wasn't like, neither one of my parents were like the type of people who'd sit in front of a TV for hours and like have a TV dinner and all this kind of stuff. No, they weren't like that. They were very like mindful of time and very structured. So you'd wake up super early, you'd go to bed, and I always have to do the dishes at the end of the day. That's one of the things. And I used to like hate it initially, but also it made me a bit of a clean freak to this day. And like my cooking skills are a bit sketchy, but my cleaning skills, especially when it comes to dishes, you know, top tier.
So, who were your important figures in your life when you were a child? Like heroes, role models?
Because I had a lot of older brothers, and upon reflection, even like as you grow older, like they shaped a lot of my decisions, consciously and subconsciously. Like for example, I love football. I tell everybody I love football. But my brothers chose my football team. I didn't even have a say in it. They're like, we're going to support Arsenal. We're in Wales, by the way. All right?
That's so funny.
And we'll support Arsenal. But then I understood why they did it. Because Arsenal were the first team to field a starting 11 of all black players. My brothers used to see these guys on the pitch as role models because they grew up in the 90s and there was a lot more racism and stuff. So you needed that kind of like positive reinforcement whatever way you can, right? So there was this like French player, black French player called Thierry Henry, and he was like an idol for my brothers and the entire family. Even my sisters were like, oh, right. And like my brothers used to look at him as like, this guy was like the standard, and he brought a lot of pride to the black community. Even like the community in Butetown, a lot of the people support Arsenal because of that. So my brothers were a huge role model. But then outside of like the home, there was like people like that Sheikh that I mentioned. Like my teacher, Sheikh Hisham, was like a very sweet human being. It was just like very, very kind. So like imagine I had like some teachers who were monsters, like literally putting their hands on kids, and then you had like this guy who was just like the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to be like him, I don't want to be like them. So and then in school, like one or two of my teachers I think were amazing. Like I used to have a history teacher called Mr. Starr, and this guy was like unbelievable. Because he was just like so passionate about history and like how previous events just shaped the reality that we're living in today. His classes were like a movie. So it was like a few little figures here and there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any specific traditions or holiday that you remember celebrating while growing up? And what did that look like for you?
Eid was like literally the two occasions in a year that my parents, who were like these super controlled and borderline militant parents, would just be chilled for 2 days. For 2 days.
You're waiting for it.
Yeah, like my dad was like super militant, right? You know, he used to sing songs like "Early to bed, early to rise, makes you healthy, wealthy, wise." He'd be screaming at like 6 a.m. in the morning. That would be the day he would be chilled and relaxed. And my mum was always is a very relaxed character, but again, like she would take it easier.
Yeah.
So Eid was like a whole thing where, like, there's a whole tradition to it. Like you have to buy brand new clothes, you have to have gifts. You know, you get to see a lot of your relatives and friends and extended family, and it's the best time to see the community in general.
Yeah.
So, if somebody was like an alien was to come to my world and was to ask me to show me around my community, Eid would be the day I chose because everybody's outside and yeah, just magical memories.
You say my community. Could you specify what that is to you?
My community, a very good question. My community is, let's start at the base level. It's a working class community. We'll start there. So originally we used to live in Butetown, then we moved to Grangetown. But they're like literally next door to each other. But I still see Butetown as my community. And it's not an ethnicity thing. It's more of a...
My place, my environment?
Yes, an environment. But it's a very heavily working class environment. So everybody has this kind of like, there's a bond,
I know what
an unspoken bond,
Yeah.
right? And irrespective of skin color, religion, all of these things I kind of say, everybody felt very together. So you knew a lot of everybody around you in that space. And I felt very comfortable in that space. It was like one of the only places that I felt like I didn't have to wear a mask in any form or have to modify my personality in any way, kind of thing. So yeah, that's my community.
Thank you so much. So are there any stories or memories of interest that comes up when you think of your community?
Yeah. Funny thing, I was at the shoot yesterday.
Yeah.
The guy who owns the place, his name's Morgan, he's the same height as me, right? And we were talking about, because I was going up and down the ladder, and we were talking about heights. And I said, I've got a huge fear of heights. And he goes, me too. I goes, it really hasn't bothered me until one time in my life. And it was like 10 years old, or maybe 11. I was sent by my father, this is when we moved to Grangetown, to go to Butetown, which has these high-rise flats, where my auntie lived on floor 16.
Wow.
And usually I'd catch the elevator, right? hit floor 16. The elevator wasn't moving anywhere. Somebody got inside and said, yeah, the elevator's broke. You're going to have to use the stairs.
To floor 16?
To floor 16. And I was carrying this little bag of like food and stuff my mum made her. And every floor that I was going up, I just saw people just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then when it got to like floor 14 or 13, for whatever reason, I just peered down the stairs and the railings were so like, yeah, it's just a health and safety hazard. Thank God they've kind of sorted it out a little bit. But I just saw all the way down and I just froze. I couldn't move. And I must have stayed there for like 20, 30 minutes. And I was just like, I got to get up there because this food's getting cold. And my dad, like, if he finds out I got stuck, it would have caused all sorts of problems for me, right? So, and it was just like a lot of hostile people in that building as well, like, who were just like scowling at me. And I was just like this little kid carrying his bag. And then I finally got to floor 16. And then I told my auntie, and she was just like horrified that I went all the way up. But yeah, that sort of memory.
That's quite funny. I quite like that one, actually climbing 16 flights.
16 flights on a hot sunny day.
Oh, you made it worse.
Yeah, no, but it was beautiful in a sense because you got up so high, you could just see all of Butetown, all of Grangetown, all of like that area of Cardiff, right? But yeah, I'd rather have done that in an elevator as opposed to so yeah, I have a real phobia of heights, but yeah.
We talked more on a wider scale of places you feel connected to. Is it possible that we narrow that down? Is there a specific building, a specific attraction, a specific thing
absolutely.
that you feel attached to?
I'm a very nostalgia-driven person, even though I'm making it a real thing not to ever really think about the past, because the past is kind of like, it's a warped way of looking at reality. But there's several buildings I have a strong affinity to. The Butetown Flats, massive part, because originally, like I was telling Rob, my mum come here. I can't always remember the date, but she came not because we were fleeing war like a lot of Somali people were later on, but because my brother needed surgery. So my brother's got polio. My oldest brother's got polio on his legs, on his leg, and he was sent to Great Ormond Street in London to have surgery, in hope of have surgery. And then the doctor looked at her and said, it's a foregone conclusion. There's nothing they can really do for him. The muscle's wasted away. So he's got like this really strong leg and he's got one that's kind of like wasted away. And then my uncle who's living in London said to my mother, you've got to remember, my mother didn't speak English, has never been in the UK. And to add another layer to that, I remember she always reminds me of a story that when she first flew into Heathrow, she saw how grey and miserable the UK, and she started bawling and just won't stop bawling until she got out the airport, because she was like, what's this horrible place I'm at? But my uncle said to her, listen, London's no life for you right here, or like your kids. You should go to Cardiff, right? Because we had quite a bit of family there. So she moved from there and somehow got some housing in the Butetown Flats. I wasn't born there, I wasn't around, but when we left that building and stuff, right, other family members who were moving from Somalia or migrating from Somalia to the UK kind of moved into that, like my auntie. Yeah. So I used to spend a lot of time with my auntie there. So yeah, I have a strong relationship with that place. Where else? I would say the South Wales Islamic Centre, because there's 2 mosques in Butetown. The one that I love the most is the South Wales Islamic Centre. That's the one that my family always used to go to. And there's 2 mosques. One of them is a Somali mosque, right? So you would have thought as a Somali, you would have went to a Somali mosque. But we went to the South Wales Islamic Centre, which is kind of like, it's run by Yemenis, but it's more of a diverse mosque. And I like it because, and as a kid, I liked it because I used to see all these different kinds of people, as opposed to Somali mosques, I just see one kind of people. But yeah, diversity and different cultures meeting together, I think, is one of the most beautiful things.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So you talked about you guys being Somali, and you also grew up in a very diverse area. I'm sure a lot of different African ethnicities.
100%.
So what does your own personal connection to African heritage look like, and how did you explore that connection being based in Wales?
That's a great question, because I always felt like being African, being Somali, it cast a shadow of whatever situation I was in. It made me look at things in a certain way. Like, there's certain people, like I got friends, like some of them, like, their heritage doesn't really play too much of a part in their day-to-day decision making. But for me, it always did. I have a strong affinity for it, because I see a beauty in it, of being African and being Somali, that makes me want to hold on to it. It doesn't, like, and the funny thing is as well, it's like, rarely, like, that magic of being African, that magic of being Somali, rarely do I see it translate in day-to-day life. So, like, people might look at the Somali community or African community, there's not much, maybe there might not be much appeal from a surface level. But it's just like that character, like the funniest people on the planet are Somalis. There's no two ways about it. But Africans in general, Africans are wildly funny people that, and it's not even, sometimes it's not even with intent. It's just approach, how they look at things, what they say. Like some of the nicknames in the Somali community, and I won't say it on camera, but it's just wild. It's just insane. Like, for example, there was a guy in my neighborhood called Abdi Skinny. Now, you would have thought Abdi Skinny would have been a skinny guy, but this guy was severely obese. And he used to call him, oh, he's skinny, skinny. I was just like, an example. An example. So, yeah. Just a very bizarre community, man. A very funny community. Jokes upon jokes. But when things go wrong as well, like, I don't know, life and death. Like, I know somebody passes away, somebody's in some sort of financial hardship. They rally around in a way that I don't see in Western society. And like the respect for elders as well. Like this is a huge thing. Like, we live in a very ageist society. Like, a minute a person reaches 30, you're done. 40, you better start picking out your plot, in a cemetery. 50, you're a foregone conclusion. You're invisible in society. And what I notice about, like, Somali communities, African communities, the predominantly even the ethnic communities, they really protect and, like, look after their senior citizens in their community. So it's just like a lot of beautiful things I see.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
So, after school, what did you do?
After school, university, then a series of odd jobs, right? Because for me, I always wanted to work in the field of creativity, and it took me a while to get to that, because I come from a background where Somalis, we don't look at creativity as even an option. So you work a 9 to 5, and you think to yourself, like, how can I take advantage of my creativity, or what projects can I get involved in? And it was always like a little side project or a side hustle. And then 2021, it became my 9 to 5, basically.
Yeah.
And that's when Unify. So funny thing, you asked me about Unify. Unify started really in 2019.
Okay.
But it became a thing straight after the pandemic, which was what I needed for to give me the confidence, so to speak.
Yeah.
To do it.
So what inspired you to do the work with Unify then?
Great question. I felt very frustrated because I wasn't doing creative endeavors, one. Number two, the way the world was, right? Like, the great thing about COVID was it told everybody to take a minute to observe the world. you know, around you. And that's when it dawned upon me, like, the areas that I'm from, that we were speaking about, there's very little visual representation of it.
Okay.
Like, yeah. So I felt like I need to do something about that, and that's where Unify came from.
That's really nice. Thank you. So you talked about representation being limited. Do you feel like there are any other challenges that faced Black communities in Wales?
Oh, massive. Like, I think we don't really have the resources. I don't think we're really welcomed into the arts, right? The creative industries here in Wales, we're seen as almost like invisible or an afterthought. So they don't know, like, and by they, I'm talking about the like, Wales in general doesn't know how to deal with people from minorities, or the global majority, as they say, right? So yeah, there's like a whole host of challenges, and I felt like for us, we had to, like, for us to get our ideas out, we just had to be really driven and try to, like, I didn't look to Wales for any support. I'd look, you know, I look at social media as inspiration, for example. I'd see what people who I consider peers or people who I admire, what they're doing. I'm thinking, if they can do it, why can, you know, why can't I do it? And it gave me the encouragement for her to do it.
That's lovely. So in terms of change, what would you like to see in Wales in terms of race, identity and belonging? What changes would you like to see?
Oh, that's such a tricky question.
Let's break it down. Let's say, what changes would you like to see in 5 years? What changes would you like to see in 10 years? And what changes would you like to see in 50 years?
I think it'd actually be easier to start with 50 because...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, but like I say, it's like you look at big picture, right?
Yeah.
I think people from minorities should have clear, like, I don't know, easy access to working within the creative industries.
Yeah.
That's one, right? The resources should be made. I don't know, like the economy and stuff, it makes it a little bit tricky, but some of these resources should be readily available. I believe that Wales systemically doesn't see Black and brown artists or minorities as Welsh. There's this whole identity issue, which is really conflicting, right? And that kind of needs to go away. Yeah, no, that's probably the biggest things I would say.
Thank you. So what role then does activism and community organising play in your life?
I'm not the biggest activist, right? Because there's people on the ground who really go about organising and, you know, like, for example, demonstrations, marches, rallies, and I try to do it through my work to speak out on things that, you know, are close to me, like identity, acceptance, but I try to do it through my work.
Yes.
So it is a form of activism in a sense, but I wouldn't, you know, necessarily call myself an activist.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that leads to the next question. Wow. So how do you see the role of cultural practices? That's art, that's music, that's sport, that's fashion. How does that play into activism?
Massive. Because I think sport, art, culture, it just provides a platform for us to speak about issues that, you know, we shy from, right? Like issues that are uncomfortable. And it's usually under those lenses or those kind of settings that it becomes easier to talk about these issues.
Yes.
Yeah. So like their roles can't be understated. It's massive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to switch to a more broader vision. What is that? What does your future of Unify look like? We'll do that another, like, let's say another 10 years in the future. What would Unify look like?
No, I can answer that right now. It's just like, it's a great question. I think we want to amplify what we're doing times 10, times 100 in a sense, right? So I think maybe in the next 5, I like to do things abroad more because I just felt like, we mentioned the Ivory Coast is like a time that I spent there. it just broadened my mind. And it made me think a lot more global. So I think our work needs to be a lot more global. It needs to be working in other parts of the world. That's one. Number two is, we've just begun working with Welsh government and people like government bodies and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we need to kind of expand that. And I feel right now the work that we do with them is quite restrictive, and I'd like to do things where they're less restrictive, because I feel like we have a better idea of what they're trying to do. So we're talking about soft power. You mentioned soft power, right? So I think like one of the arguments that I bring to the Welsh government is like soft power is really undervalued here in Wales, and they need to do a lot more, and they don't even really see it as a value or significance. And I really think it like there's so many missed opportunities in the way they approach things. I just feel like there's like a lot of room to take advantage of. I'm waffling here, but yes.
No, that's great. You're not. That's the point of this. It's a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So circling back to what you said about, you feel like there's this disconnect between why Wales doesn't recognise minorities as Welsh, especially minority artists. Do you connect with the identity of being Welsh?
Yeah, 100%. I think the aha moment for me was growing up. I didn't really know if I was Welsh or Somali, and I'll expand on that. So when I'm here in Wales, I feel very Somali. When I go to Somalia, Somaliland, that's where I'm from, I feel very Welsh. and it's weird because you don't feel like you kind of belong in either place. But then it dawned upon me, it can coexist in the same thing. You could be Welsh and you could be Somali. You don't need to have one label. That one label rarely defines a human being. It's multiple labels, right? Or multiple associations is probably a better word for it. So, I think 100% you could be both.
Amazing. So in terms of that, how do you connect to Wales and its history and other Welsh people?
That's a great question. I connect to it massively because Somalis were one of the first minorities, or the global majority, as they say. I'm trying to use that word, global majority, right? Who actually come to Cardiff and come to Wales, right? So there's like a lot of history and heritage, right? And for us to understand Welsh history, I'm talking about myself, right, is something that's pretty important, because a lot of our history inside Wales is connected to our communities anyway. So I feel like to understand Wales and to learn about Welsh history will, in effect, help me understand previous generations who came here, and what they experienced and what they underwent. You see what I'm saying? So I think it's like massively important.
Thank you. So we're now going to briefly go back to your childhood. Are there any particular challenges you felt while growing up?
Oh, massively. I felt like my heritage, my identity, what I look like. I could go into a classroom, I could feel prejudged. I can go into a work environment, I could be prejudged. Somalis were seen with, it was like a stigma to be Somali, in a sense. It's like you're seen as a disruptive person, sometimes an aggressive person. So I had to deal with a lot of that baggage, especially early. And I felt like it made my life a lot, pretty tricky in a sense, because I felt like you weren't really given a fair crack or a fair shot at certain things purely because of your heritage. Because in these communities around here, like if you ask a regular white person, a Welsh white person, what's a Somali person, like a lot of the associations would be quite negative. Like Somalis are troublemakers, this, that. So yeah, I dealt with a lot of that growing up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I survived.
So you were based in Butetown and Grange-town. What are some changes, good or bad, that you witnessed?
I think there's so much good that's positive that's happened, especially in the last 5 years. Like, when I meet the younger generations, I'm talking about kids who are like 16, 15, and I think some of those stereotypes or challenges that I was facing, they don't face as much because the world has rapidly changed, right? Especially, let's just talk 5 years, forget anything else, right? And there's a lot more acceptance. Right? Yes, there's extremism but there's a lot more acceptance locally or within Wales, right? And you see these things like the Future Generations Act, for example, right? And Wales trying to be an anti-racist nation and stuff. What it's done is for those younger children, I feel it's making it a more tolerant society. So
that's great. Thank you. So, keeping on the theme of young people, if you could talk to your younger self, what would you tell them?
I would say, like, just to dream, to be proud of your heritage. Don't look at it as something that's holding you back. Even though I never ever thought that, right? But I know some of my friends felt like that could be working against them. And yeah, just be grateful, because like this is a beautiful place. Like despite like some of the hang-ups and I've mentioned and stuff, and some of the challenges, it's a beautiful place. Yeah.
Thank you. And then, if you could speak to an ancestor, who would you talk to, and what would you ask them?
Now you throw me off. This is like the scene in Black Panther when he goes. I don't know. It would be cool, all right, if you could meet one of the first Somalis who come to Wales, right? And just to tell them what life is like in 2025, and like for example, a lot of the pictures I see of the Somali community from like the early days, like the earliest memories of them being in Wales, they were kind of like really suited and booted, and it felt like they were trying their very hardest to be one with society. And and I would assume they might have thrown their own cultural practices to the side just to, embrace this new society that I live in. And it'd be cool just to tell them, like, you can be you, right? In 2025, which is amazing, right? So yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be a very Black Panther moment, man.
And finally, could you please look into the camera? What would you like to say to future generations?
What I'd like to say to future generations, I'm an optimist, and there's a lot of good in the world. But I think, everybody has a responsibility to kind of like protect that good and spread that good and make things better for future generations, and not to think just purely by yourself, but about what's to come.